Hi, everybody. Happy Workers' Day. I think today is Wednesday also. So happy Wednesday, happy hump day, happy day, happy being alive day. I am just waiting for Kathleen to join and then we can start. I hope you're having a beautiful day. I have accepted. There we go. Hi.
Hello.
Oh, yeah.
So good. How are you?
I'm good. I feel better than I felt in the morning when we spoke. I'm feeling good. The sun is shining. Life is good. So let's take it away. Welcome. I'm so happy you're here. So I'm just going to read your bio and then we can start. So everybody, today I am joined by Kathleen. I actually, funny enough, I met her, we spoke for a few minutes and I was already calling her Kat. In my head, I'm like, I will go. Who gave you the permission to give her a nickname? But welcome, Kat. So Kathleen is dedicated to living a purposeful life filled with grace. With her love for learning and belief in the connection between all beings, Kathleen has undergone profound transformations. Her deepened practice of yoga, driven by curiosity and appreciation for its power, has led her to explore the intricate balance of body, mind, and spirit. As both a student and a teacher, she remains committed to honoring yoga's traditions while embracing her ongoing journey of self-discovery. Kathleen is also the founder of the Aligned Living community and platform, which offers a holistic wellness experience tailored to meeting the unique needs of women. And she's also the founder and the host of the Aligned Living podcast, which I was a part of. And I think I need to come back again. We need to talk, girl. So welcome, Kathleen. Whoop, whoop. I need to get background sound. So when I say welcome, then I play that. How are you doing? How's your day going? I know you had a class earlier.
Awesome. Thanks, babe. It's always so weird, like listening to people speak about you and
Yes.
kind of describe the work that you're doing. And it's like your bio is always like this culmination of where you've been and what it's taken for you to get to where you are. So it
Yeah.
always like makes me feel very humbled to be here and to be invited to have these conversations. I've had a really great day so far. I teach a 7:30 online class every Wednesday morning, and then I teach a 10 a.m. in-person class, after which I then film content for an online fitness platform that I provide content for. And then now I'm here. So it's been a jam-packed day
Yes.
already. Lots of yoga and breath work and all the things. But I'm feeling good. I'm excited to be here and excited for us that we connected and that like our connection just keeps growing. And I'm so excited to see where it goes.
Me too. So do you do yoga on a full-time basis? Is that like your job in inverted commas?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really describe myself as a yoga teacher. I think that teaching yoga is something that I do. It's part of the practices that I facilitate, and I think more than that, the practice of yoga on and off the mat has been a amazing tool of guidance for me on my mental health journey.
Yeah.
Hi, Kath. Hi, Mike. And so yoga and the principles of yoga and the traditions of yoga have really been guidelines for me that have helped me to bring myself out of very dark places, to keep myself out of very dark places, even though I touch and go there every now and then.
Yeah.
And so me doing my yoga teacher training and courses and things has really been a way for me to be able to verbalize and share tangible, practical tools with others in a way that I can describe it well enough to describe what it's done for me. Yeah.
Okay, so is that how then you found your way into yoga? Was it because of your personal experience, your mental health journey, which led you to, because like me, I did mindfulness teacher training last year. I don't know if I told you this. I'm still gathering my hours. I'm like, ah. So how I found myself doing the mindfulness teacher training was because of, I think because one, I was lucky to meet the person that offered me the training, but also because I had an experience with anxiety and I was like, oh, let's see if this is going to help me. So is that what happened with you?
Yeah, I think I was in production for almost 8 years, where it was high stress environment, where I think, a lot of people can say they are, high anxiety, high functioning humans, where we are experiencing maybe emotional difficulties or mental health stability issues, whether they're stress related, of outside stresses, or whether it's internal. For me, it was a mixture of everything. I was working too hard, I was playing too hard, I was sleeping too little, I wasn't eating well. It was like Red Bull and cigarettes 4 a.m. in the morning when you get onto set. And it's just, it wasn't sustainable. And that actually brought me into, I know people throw the saying around quite loosely of like having like an emotional, or like having a nervous breakdown. People call it like a nervous breakdown. But if we think of that concept of a nervous breakdown, it's a nervous system breakdown. And so for me, like, I literally went through it where I think my whole nervous system was just like, I'm done. I can't hold you anymore. Like, I'm tried my best. I've been in fight, flight, freeze for way too long now. And that led me to basically having a really bad anxiety attack at work one day. And then that being the catalyst for me to decide that I need to change direction. I can't be in this world anymore. It's not good for me. And even though I was really good at it, and I was like in a very good position, I was promoted, I had my own office, it was amazing, but it wasn't actually bringing me joy, and it wasn't lighting me up, and it wasn't offering me a space to not be in hyperdrive all the flipping time. And so when I wanted to make the shift, the question that my mother posed to me was like, well, if you want to do something else, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know. I don't even know where to start. This is all I know. I've always just done photography, production. And she said, well, when are you happy? And I said, well, the only time I really feel like I can relax and like feel like a little more like myself is when I go to my yoga classes. And then my mom was like, well, become a yoga teacher. And that's kind of how that started.
Oh, wow. And then is that how Aligned Living was born? Did it come from that journey, or was that something separate?
I mean, yeah, everything is so connected. I think especially as like entrepreneurs, we'll know that our personal lives and our entrepreneurial or entrepreneurship journey is so interlinked, because we are constantly manifesting what we want in the world around us, like as within, so without. And so the journey was, I was a teacher and the studio manager at a yoga studio in Cape Town for 5 years when I started my training. I did my 200-hour training there, 300-hour training there, multiple other trainings, but it was very much in person, in community. Loved it. It was amazing. I learned a lot there. And then I actually ended up moving, but I put my notice in 6 months before the time, so I didn't know what was coming. So I put my notice in, and 6 months later when I moved, I actually moved in March 2020 of lockdown. I moved in the week of lockdown, was like the pivot and the shift when my chapter ended at the studio, and when I moved to Hermanus. Which obviously then changed everything, because I thought I was going to move into a new community, a new town, meet all the people who teach yoga, who come to yoga, and that didn't happen. So that pushed me to go online. And that's really where my like online, I guess, work was born. I don't know if I would ever really have gone online if it wasn't for the push of COVID. But I did, and that led me to running online workshops, and that led me to starting little weekly classes, and the weekly classes grew into like a group of amazing women that then grew into a video library that I wanted to host for people to be able to access the classes at a later time, which then grew into like building the platform and then creating the podcast around that, and so
Yeah.
it's all been these, like, you look in hindsight, you go, oh, I didn't know why I was doing that in the, like, when I was doing it, but in hindsight
Yeah.
I can see how that's one of the building blocks.
Oh, interesting. Is there a specific reason why you're focusing on women and not men? Because, there's always stuff
Yeah,
for women, but there's hardly ever any places like this for men.
I know, and I get that question quite a lot.
Mm.
I actually get it from a lot of women who know men who need spaces like this, and they're like, "Why are you only offering this to women? Like, the men also need it." And, like, yes, the men also need it,
Mm.
but when it comes to creating offerings and really serving people to the fullest, deepest level that you can,
Mm.
there's, in the business world, there's a saying of, if you try to serve everyone, you actually end up serving no one. And so what I found with my work was I was trying to cater my classes and my offerings to everyone, but what
Mm.
that meant was I couldn't go deeper with the clients that I had into things that were more specific to them, because that would actually be excluding the people who were also in the group.
Mm.
So it's very interesting how that works, that actually by almost excluding men out of certain of my projects and certain of my work,
Yeah.
it's actually been so much better for the women who are in it, because now I can dive into deeper things. Now we can talk about cyclical living, we can talk about hormones, we can talk about the woman's body, we can
Mm.
talk about feminine energy, masculine energy, womb work, womb healing. And it actually, by closing it to women, it actually opened up so much more that I could do with the women who were in my community.
Yeah.
And when I did a 6-month business course last year, with Modern Empress, and one of the things is looking at who you are serving, and I had to go and do research on who was attending, who was drawn to my work. And when I
Mm.
looked at the work, the workshops, the courses, the people who follow me on social media, it was like 98% women,
Yeah.
who are and were following my work. And I was like, okay, cool, like, you're all showing up here, so let me show up fully for you. And that's kind of like how I got into the women's work part of it all.
Makes sense. I mean, I'm all for Womandla. So when we had our podcast episode, I shared a little about my mental health journey, and I mentioned how I had my first panic attack during COVID. I was stuck in KZN. My daughter was sick, and obviously it was level 5, and I couldn't go home. I felt like I was stuck. I didn't know what was happening. Had started suffocating, couldn't breathe, asking myself what's going on, cried myself. Then I had to calm myself down. The only way I could calm myself down, because I didn't know what was happening, was because I told myself, if I don't stop suffocating, then I'm really going to die. And then my daughter's really not going to have a mom. So you also mentioned now that you had an anxiety attack at work. So I think we can now shift on to the conversation. So what I want to find out is there a difference between anxiety attack and a panic attack, firstly?
Yes, so there is a difference. So I think it's different for everyone. So speaking from my experience, my anxiety attacks were very regular. For me, how I experienced it, it would be feeling of overwhelm, heart palpitations, shortness of breath, just feeling like you are totally frozen in that moment.
Mm.
But it can pass. Like, it passes. You almost like you're able to maybe in that moment take a few deep breaths, ground yourself, go stand outside in the sunshine, or put your feet in the ground, have a sip of water, get into your body, take a moment. I mean, I've experienced it, I think, in so many different ways, and I've had so
Mm.
many different ways as I've grown, because I think as we change, our ways of coping with these things change. But
Yes.
the severity of a panic attack versus an anxiety attack can be much more intense. Also, a lot of the times an anxiety attack, you can kind of feel it coming, It's like you
Mm.
feel more and more and more and more and more anxious until you're like in like the peak of your anxiety. Whereas a panic attack can like sneak up on you. A panic attack can be that your nervous system is actually struggling and dysregulated, and then there's a flip. So I had two severe panic attacks probably about 2 years ago now, where my symptoms were almost paralysis of the body, paralysis of speech. It was very hectic. It was so hectic actually that I was almost like a kind of like the diagnosis from the doctor initially was that I'd had a minor stroke, or like a minor seizure. And so because of the loss of speech and because of the paralysis of the body and so on, I had to go for the MRIs and the brain scans, and nothing showed up. Like I was literally like the picture of health on all my like scans.
Yes.
And I had something similar happen to me about a month ago, actually 2 months ago, where I felt like I was having a heart attack. And again, like all my scans were like, you're the picture of health, when they went through the scans and things. So with a panic attack, it can come out of the blue and it can be quite severe. Whereas with the anxiety, it can be maybe a more frequent thing that you feel coming. And so there is a lot more that you can do in the moment to help support yourself with an anxiety attack. And with a panic attack, it's a little more tricky depending on the severity.
That's so interesting. It's also interesting that I named it a panic attack because I thought it was a panic attack. I don't even know there was a difference. So that's interesting. I need to go back and think back and ask myself, but I do think it was because it just came out of. Then what I also wanted to find out, you know how everyone these days is talking about anxiety. We've all got anxiety. We joke about it. We don't joke about it. So what's the difference between anxiety and worry and being nervous and having butterflies in your stomach? And then also there's obviously the anxiety that is diagnosed by a mental health professional, which is a disorder. Yeah.
I mean, I think we in our conversation earlier, I said to you, I think at this point, and probably not just at this point, I'm sure throughout the ages, obviously mental health is quite new to the world, and to most people. It's not even recognized by some people as a real thing. But I think at this point, with like what's going on in the world around you, if you do not have some form of stress or anxiety around something, like then I'd actually be very worried about you because I think like for most of us, there's so much going on. So we've got external stress factors, which is, I mean, what's going on in the world around us on large, like globally, there's a lot of things going on that's very, very worrisome. What's going on within your immediate community, what's going on within your immediate environment, your neighbors, what's going on within your immediate living space, what's going on within your workspace, what is the health of the relationships that you're in. So those are all like these external stress factors that can impact us. And then internally, regulating the body and regulating the nervous system, we have two types of nervous system. Well, we've got the two different nervous system kind of programs that run. So the one is the sympathetic nervous system. This guy is like switched on when we need to be on the get and go. So like the example that's always given is like when the lion's over there and you need to run, you need your sympathetic nervous system to get you. That was so funny. I actually got a fright now because I didn't know my husband was coming home and I saw someone walk up the stairs. So my nervous
which one
system,
was that one?
That's sympathetic. That's because I literally like went like this. I almost like jumped off my chair.
You did.
So that's sympathetic. Okay, so we need our sympathetic because if a random person gets in your house, you need to be able to jump up and get out of there. But the problem is that in the modern day and age is that it's not just the big kind of fright thing like that that's going to get you. It's the email that you haven't responded to because it's stressing you out. It's the meeting with your boss. It's the traffic that you're sitting in. It's
Bank balance.
Yeah, bank. Oh, praise, girl. Praise that bank balance. No, exactly that. It is. And that's what puts us in like in our sympathetic nervous system, which is fight,
Yeah.
flight, freeze, or fawn. So either you're in your fight mode where you feel like you're constantly having to like be on the like offense, like take things on, make the changes, make the shifts, like that all the time. Or you're like in flight mode where that is like I'm actually just going to be in total avoidance and try and just like not look at that bank balance, like, you know, or print the
Yes,
receipts or
yes.
whatever. Or
Yeah.
you're in freeze mode where you simply feel like you are stuck. So for me, there's a very interesting balance between being in freeze mode in your nervous system and thinking that you are just procrastinating and you're lazy. Those are two different things. And I think that's a pressure point for a lot of people, is they immediately label themselves as I'm procrastinating, I'm not doing this thing, it must be because I'm lazy, when actually you could just be frozen and you just like, oh, actually, like I can't do this. Or then
Yeah.
fawn, and in fawn we're almost like we just don't care about anything anymore. You just get to that point where you're like, actually I don't feel anything about this, not a good, not a bad, like when we become indifferent. And so we've got the sympathetic, which we need, but then
Yeah.
we actually want to have the parasympathetic, which is our rest, digest, heal, and repair system. So what happens when we're in sympathetic is that the body takes away all its attention from any process that's happening in your body that's not going to help you get away from the lion or the email or the whatever. So it starts to stop the healing process where it's not crucially needed. It takes away attention from digestion, which is huge. And when we start to mess with our digestive system, we start to mess with a whole lot of other things, including our, you know, our gut health plays such a big role in our hormonal health, in our chemical production within our bodies. You know, a chemical like serotonin, which is produced in the gut, is our happy hormone. And
Yeah.
so if your gut isn't working properly, there's just, I'm not going to go into too much depth, but that just gives you an idea of why it's so important to have the parasympathetic nervous system active as well. And so to lead this back to your question around feeling stress and feeling anxiety, I think what's important to note is that there is so much that you do have control over. There's so many things that you can do that are small, that don't have to cost you money, that don't have to take you outside of yourself, that don't have to be extra things that you can do. But also I think there has to be, and this has been for me out of my own experience, there has to be a surrendering and a letting go and a point where you go, I can't control everything. And actually, as much as I think I'm controlling shit, I'm not controlling anything. Everything is like as it's going, you know, as it's going to be. There is the greater powers at work. And so I think like knowing that I'm just looking after me and then applying myself to being grateful for that opportunity and that potential for healing, and then also knowing that I can't control everything has been really important for me. And that knowing that stress and anxiety are two different things. Like you're stressed out because you've got stressors, or you're anxious because you're experiencing a shift internally that is either physical, emotional, or energetic.
Sure, you've put it so beautifully, like such a not nice thing. You just packaged so beautifully. It looks cute. Like I want to buy it. I'm glad you mentioned the thing about procrastinating and how that can be linked to anxiety and being scared, because a lot of the time we're so hard on ourselves because we're like, I need to stop procrastinating. I need to set my goals. I need to write things down. I need to know what I'm going to do and I need to do it. And when you don't do it, you're like, why didn't I do it? Apart from the fact that there's obviously expectations at work or wherever, but even internally, we just keep judging ourselves for procrastinating. But I don't think we ever really consider the fact that maybe I'm procrastinating because I might be scared that I'm going to fail, or I'm just overwhelmed because I don't know where to start. So I'm so glad you mentioned that and the link between the two. Then I wanted to just also maybe speak about how anxiety can show up in other ways. We've already spoken about procrastination, but in other ways, like how can a normal everyday person identify that actually I might be feeling anxious, because we know how a lot of people are not aware and they're not in tune with their bodies. So we don't realize that sometimes maybe if my chest is burning, I might think it's heartburn, but it might actually be anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but
Yes.
I can only speak out of experience in
Yeah.
that for me, I do spend a lot of time in my body. So I can really feel when my body is relaxed or not.
Mm.
Anxiety and I guess like the manifestation of anxiety in the physical body can come up in so many ways, shapes, and forms.
Yeah.
Injury, tightness of the body, fatigue. Um, like I mentioned with me, a lot of the time it's tight chest, it's heart palpitations, all these little like symptoms that you start to get to know the more you spend time with yourself. But I think what's important and relevant here is not always the what, but the why or the where or the how. So
Mm.
like someone like me, and you probably like wouldn't say it because like I'm always I'm doing live videos, or I'm on Instagram, or I teach a lot of yoga online to like a lot of people. But like
Mm.
I'm actually quite an introvert, and I actually get quite intense social anxiety.
Me too.
So yeah, so it's like we're these introverted extroverts.
Yes.
um and so like when I find myself with like a bunch of people I don't know, like there is like this little bit of social anxiety that comes up. I
Mm.
think that, you know, these things are so complex and it's so intertwined. Like if we look at our programming, our upbringing, epigenetics, at trauma that we're storing in our bodies, that the I'll just like kind of share this story. It was this video of this woman. She's probably in about her 80s,
Mm.
and in the video she was putting lipstick on in a mirror looking at herself.
Mm.
And she's telling the story of how when she was a little girl, like very very young, her mom was putting makeup on, and she put her mom's lipstick on.
Mm.
And her mom looked at her and she said, "You look like a clown. Take that off your face. Like, wipe it off your face." And to this day, with her being 80 years old, she cannot put lipstick on without thinking and without hearing her mother's voice say, "Take that off your face. You look like a clown." Even though she doesn't believe it now,
Mm.
it
Mm.
was something that stuck, and that is something that she's aware of. Her mother could have said 20,000 other things that she cannot remember, that is subconsciously affecting her to this day. And so I think it's important for us to, I mean, I'm only speaking about this because it's my work that I need to do, is to be kinder to ourselves, to be gentler to ourselves, and to understand that we have been potentially brought up within a society, a community, a home, a school, where I always laugh because I'm like, from like a little child, like if you get sent to school,
Mm.
you are told when to be there. You're told when you have to sit, when you have to stand, when you're allowed to eat, when you're allowed to play, when you're allowed to go home, and then you're told what you have to do when you go home. And this is not me saying they shouldn't be disciplined. Of course, they should be disciplined. But to
Yes.
me, it's just like this perfect, like, training and smoothing the person up when they get into work stage. Because then you
Mm.
go into work and then you get told when you have to be at work, when you're allowed to eat, when you're allowed to go home, how much you're
Mm-hmm.
allowed to earn. And it's just like this programming and this world where we are taught that it's all about us giving and doing. And the more we give and the more we do, the more we'll be accepted, the more we'll be heard, the more we'll be seen, the more we'll be able to get. So it's like the more I give, the more I get. And yes, that is true as well. I mean, I work extremely hard in my business. My output is probably over output most of the time, but it's different in the why and the how that we're doing things. So I think it's important to, you know, understand that you're a whole, and that there's so much dynamic to who you are as a person, that if you fall, and especially for women, for men, you know, they can do quite well in a 24-hour cycle. You wake up, you go to sleep. You wake up, you go to sleep. You wake up, you go to sleep. Like for women, it doesn't work that way. We can go through a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 day cycle of feeling a certain way, but yet, and we'll wake up on the day of our bleed, like you'll wake up on the day of the first day of your bleed, of your menstrual cycle, like of your menstruation time, and you'll be exhausted and you'll be starving and you'll be irritated, and then it's like, why can't you just get yourself together, Kathleen? Like, I've got things to do, you know. And not just to women but to men as well. I think like there's this lack of empathy that we have with ourselves, and this lack of understanding, because like you said earlier, like if you don't know yourself, how can you help yourself? If you don't get to know your body, how can you support your body? You can't, because you don't know what it needs. And it is a very scary place to go, because there is so much information out there. There is so much to learn. I mean, like, I don't think anyone on the planet will ever truly understand the whole entire human body. And as science evolves, we're learning that half the things we thought 10 years ago that were true are not true now in any case. So, you know, so I think it's like, when you look at those moments where you are like, I'm actually just feeling really anxious, but like, is this now me being lazy? Is this me being procrastinating? To open your mind up to like, okay, something is glitching, like something is not aligned, something is not in harmony. And what is that? Is it that I need to nourish myself with something more? Is it that I'm in a toxic environment that's just draining me and I actually can't like be here? You know, there's like a million things that I could mention, but I think it's just worthwhile, you know, on your question of procrastination and understanding anxiety, is that as humans we always want to try and pinpoint one thing, because if we pinpoint that one reason, then we can fix it, we can change it, and we can get straight back on track to doing what we need to do. When I'm very sorry to tell you, but it's probably a complex collection of multiple things, including stuff from your past, stuff now, stuff in your body, stuff in your mind, stuff from the outside, that's all creating your internal environment state. And that is what you are then experiencing in your physical body.
My mind has so many thoughts, and I'm like, firstly, we think there's a destination and we think there's figuring it out, but unfortunately, like you've said, we can't. We're growing every single day. So how anxiety affected me yesterday could be different today. I mean, and I was having a conversation the other day with someone who asked me, what can we do? How do we know? What are the coping mechanisms? And I was like, okay, this is what works for me. And I mentioned I color in, I dance around, I take walks. But I'm not saying that because I do these things, I never experience, when anxiety comes, I'm like, karate, kick it away. No, it's definitely going to affect me. When I resigned, you know, and also because I know sometimes it happens in my chest. When I resigned, I had a tummy ache. The entire day, my stomach was running. And I was like, what is going on? And I was getting things for my tummy. Only 2 days later, I was like, oh, girl, you were scared. So we're always going to we're constantly evolving. So we'll always just need to adjust, you know, and we will have these coping mechanisms, which I'm also going to ask you just to highlight a few of the ones that you do before we close. But you might need to always learn new ones. And it's not what works for Kathleen might not work for me. I mean, Kathleen does yoga. I've tried yoga so many times. It just feels like painful exercise. And I don't know, maybe I need to
Haven't
find the best yoga
tried my
people.
yoga.
And it just feels so sore, and I don't know. So, there's different ways, and it's just always learning yourself and what works for you. So in closing, would you share some of your techniques outside of yoga, of things that you do to manage day-to-day stresses, anxiety, worries, and everything that happens? Because I mean, social media also causes anxiety on its own.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. I think one of the things that I always like to bring up in managing anxiety, in managing stress, in looking after yourself, is before you start to add more things. So before you start to, I know, because a lot of people go like, oh, I'm going to start looking after myself now. So now I'm going to sign up for yoga. Now I'm going to start drinking smoothies. Now I'm going to start eating salads. I'm going to buy this book. I'm going to listen to that podcast. I'm going to do this. And if I do all these, if I do all these things, then I'm going to like feel better. So I say, like, instead of that, a very, very simple place to start without having to spend money, without having to learn a new skill, without having to do anything. Look at what you can eliminate that is causing imbalance, dis-ease, or toxicity in your life now. Because you will see that by eliminating things, you will already feel better. And when I speak about eliminating things, it's not only just like, okay, I'm like maybe like not going to eat a McDonald's burger every single day. Like looking at what am I taking in on all levels.
Yeah.
So what am I taking in? Yes, food wise. What am I eating? We've just spoke about gut health and important nutrition is for our overall well-being. What am I taking in socially? Which people am I allowing to be in my energy and in my space? My partner, my family. And this is where it gets really, really tricky and really difficult, because for a lot of us who are looking to go the route of living more healthy, more vibrant, aspiring to like really shine bright, often that is very disconnected from where a lot of your friends and family members find themselves. And so you find yourselves on these different journeys, but that's a whole other thing. Looking at what you are consuming digitally. So what you are taking in, how many hours, like you can, so those, I don't know how Android works, I'm sure it's similar, but I know on iPhones, if you go to your battery in settings, you go battery, and it will show you percentage how many hours a day, a week you are spending on which of your apps.
I found out I spent 8 hours on TikTok last week. I'm like, that is a work day. I could be paid a full salary a month for this.
Exactly. And you just like consuming. So before you add anything on, have a little check with yourself. Have a little a little stock take of your life, of like, what am I putting in my life in the maybe like 20, I don't know how long people sleep, like 12 hours or 18 hours that you're awake. Like, what are you doing in those 12 to 18 hours? What are you putting in there? What are you consuming? And how can you start eliminating things? Because the thing is, if you imagine that your life feels this full right now, like you already feel like you're anxious, you're exhausted, you have kids, or you've got a full-time career, or whatever the case may be, maybe you're unemployed and you've got no family, but you still feel like there's no capacity to do anything, and you're just holding this existence. Like, now you want to start adding more things to the top of this, that you're already feeling overwhelmed. Like, instead of going there, start to remove some things first. Allow yourself to open, create a little bit of space, time wise, energetically wise, mentally, emotionally, and then start adding on small little things. My sister, she's actually in advertising, but she was a coach as well, a life coach for a while, and she always talks about habit stacking. And
Mm.
I have found that that's incredibly helpful. So when instead of thinking like, okay, now I need to put aside 60 minutes for a yoga practice, now I must find my yoga tights, but now actually the delivery guy's here, or like whatever, like now I'm not going to do it because now I don't have 60 minutes anymore. Like we often
Mm.
do that to ourselves. Like you don't need that. You can literally, when your alarm goes off in the morning, sit
Mm.
up in your bed and set your alarm for a 5-minute snooze and breathe for 5 minutes. So you're going to get your snooze, which I know a lot of us snooze in anyway, but instead of snoozing half in and out of sleep, use that 15 minutes to breathe, maybe a
Yes.
little gratitude practice, maybe it's 5 minutes of journaling. Then when you're in the shower or in the bath, maybe you just take a little stretch, like take a little twist in your spine, do a little neck roll, like really like simple things. You know, when you're at work, if you have a lunch break, get off
Mm.
your bum, go sit in a spot of sun and
Mm.
go take a few breaths and just eat your meal without listening to anyone, without watching anything.
Not working
All these
on the side.
yeah, all these practices I think of like mindfulness, and stop worrying so much about the what you're doing, because it's really the why that matters. And then the how is like the conduit, or the how is like the reflection back to you of where you're at, because how you do things is going to show you where your intention is at of doing that thing.
Oh, that is beautiful. I mean, if I can share what I do, I put on some music and I dance it away and other things. But thank you so, so,
Mm.
so much. You have simplified this in the simplest way. And I think even with the knowledge that I have, I still learn so much from you. So thank you
Mm.
so much for coming. I need to speak to you so we can do a podcast episode again soon. But thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to everyone who's joined. Do you have any last words to say? Or are you happy with the knowledge that you've imparted into our lives?
Thanks, Crazy, and thanks everyone for listening. Yeah, I think just like a last thought or two. It's always difficult to share, you know, what I do for my things, you know, because a lot of the time, you know, maybe someone doesn't have access to that, or maybe it just feels like it's you don't have time, or it's you know it's going to cost you to. So, for instance, for me, I'm very lucky. I can walk down to the ocean, and cold water swimming has been one of the biggest healers for my nervous system. Um, that's been a really big one for me. But I think what I want to leave everyone with is that you are not alone in this. I
Mm.
know often it feels like no one understands. I'm in this on my flippin' own. And even though you know, maybe you do or don't, like maybe you do know that you've got like a partner who supports you or a friend, or maybe you don't have those people, or you feel like you don't have those people. There
Mm.
are people out there whose purpose and mission and passion on this
Yeah.
planet is to help and support others. They are out there, and you are never a burden
Mm.
when you reach out to someone for support. It is so important to remember
Mm.
is that if you, even if it's a little struggle, if it's a big struggle, you are in your full right to seek out support, whatever that looks like for you. I know maybe Crazy can link some things in the comments or so on. There are free helplines, there are websites with information,
Mm.
there are, I'm sure, counselors and therapists in your area who do kind of like free sessions or just support sessions. And yeah, I always say, like, there's no such thing as a stupid question. So if you're unsure of anything, or if you have any questions, please reach out to either of us. This is what lights us up and brings us joy.
Yeah.
So like anytime we get to talk about this with anyone, it makes us so happy. So yeah, I'd be happy to have a conversation. My DMs are always open.
Oh, thank you. And are you taking new clients for your virtual classes, your yoga class?
Yes. Yeah, so you can just go to www.alignedliving.co.za. That's the website, or the Instagram account obviously is here. So you can go
Mm.
to the website through there. The membership is open. There's either the full membership, which is really amazing. It's live Zoom classes with me twice a week, as well as a on-demand library filled with classes, and then a really beautiful WhatsApp group with the most incredible group of women. Or you can just sign up for the on-demand library. And then I also have retreats coming up towards the middle and the end of the year. So if you're interested in retreating or silent retreat, which silence has been one of my biggest teachers, then you can also send me a DM and I can send you info on that.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. This was amazing. Just to end it off, I'm happy you said you're not alone, because my community that I started, community in inverted commas, is called Sisonke. And the reason I called it Sisonke is because I realized that we are all in this together. So thank you. Beautiful. Have a lovely day. I hope your day is more peaceful and restful than it was this morning.
Thank you. Thank you, love. Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Lots of love. And have a beautiful day, everyone.